everybody, it's me, Jennifer Stenhouse from Little Metal Foxes. And we've got our tool tips. We're going live here with a couple of people, with Helen and Julia. If I can get them both organized, that'll be great. Hey there, how are you? And I just wanted to show you guys some great tricks for adding or being able to cut wire repeatedly. One of the things I have to do at work, oh hello, good morning, is cut pieces of things for wire for earrings and repeated links over and over and over again. So it's always really helpful when you have a good system to be able to cut wire successfully. And here we go. Let me get Helen here. And here she comes. Hey Helen, good morning. Good morning. Well, good evening for you. Live from London. It's Helen Cowart. Hi there. How are you this morning?
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing real good. Yeah, so I was thinking that we were going to have, let's see if we can get Julia in here. If she's around, we can get her in, and maybe she can join us. But I wanted to talk a little bit this morning about cutting wires.
Hi, Pam.
And doing it.
My friend Pam's on.
Oh, hi, Pam. Hello. But I wanted to be able to do this and sort of share with people one of the things that is really helpful when you have to cut repeated lengths. And there we go.
I know.
You got the front. All right, I got the front. You got the back.
I got the back.
There you go. Bring them together, get a whole fox. Hey, Sam. Good morning. So yeah, good evening in London for those of you that are watching from there, and good morning in Seattle. So good morning in Seattle.
Good morning. Good morning.
So I have so many good tricks for cutting wire repeatedly, and there are all kinds of ways.
That little video that we posted today was awesome.
Yeah, I love this tool. So this thing is fantastic. I got mine from Rio, and these are not too terribly cheap, but they are worth every penny when you are doing multiple cuts at the same length. The cool thing about this is that you can use wire, very heavy gauge. I think it goes up to 10 or 12 gauge that you can cut with this. So it's a pretty successful tool for being able to cut things, you know, just in general. It's also a double flush cutter, which I'll get into in a second. But
nice.
The nice thing is that you can adapt this with simple hardware tricks, and but you can set it for a number of different lengths. So you can cut over and over and over again for round and square wire or rectangle wire or whatever you're doing. It is still a cutter, so you're still going to get a little bit of a pinch, but this is a really good tool for doing repeated lengths. But real quick on cutting wire in general, this has got to be one of my favorite wire cutters in the world that I've ever used. And this is from Xuron, Xuron, and they're about $15 from most supply houses, like Rio and so on. But Xuron is, it's a really good mid-range priced flush cutter, and it is a good flush cutter. It will cut up to, I think, also 12 gauge. So the cool thing about this flush cutter is that it is super flat on one side, which is nice. And then, I mean, you still have a peaked edge on the inside, but it's really nice and flat on this side. The other thing that I like about this is that the tips, although they're super sharp for cutting right there, they're a little bit blunter than you would get with some of the, the more delicate wire cutters that are out there. So if you're working with something that's like wee delicate, check the wire gauge max for these, because sometimes you can only cut up to 22 gauge. And so the little delicate things are designed for very small wire. But these things I can cut up to, I think, 12 gauge with these, and it gives me a nice flush cut. I still get, like, with any cutter, you're going to get like a little rim or pinch edge, but these do a really good job of getting it pretty flush. And and it does have a simple spring. The Tronics, You know, the
Yeah.
Tronics, I believe, are a much better, flush cutter. But but and so are Lindstrom and Swanstrom. They're all good. But for $14, I have really found that I these are my favorite go-tos. So, oh, there's Julia. Hi. Let's see if we can get
Oh,
Julia
yeah. Let's
added
pop
in
her
here.
in.
Yeah. But these are fantastic for everyday wire cutting. The other thing I really like about the tip on these is that if you're cutting, like using a measuring stick or board and trying to cut on your bench, these, because
Oh, yeah.
they're tough enough on the tip, you can cut chain and fine wire right down to the table really well,
Oh,
and they don't
nice.
distort or damage. So I'll use these to measure just right on the bench using a
Mm-hmm.
uh, measuring tape on the bench. So these are my favorite go-to. The other one that's really
Ooh,
nice that is a double flush is these. And so these are flush on both sides, and you can see how thin these guys are.
yeah.
And they will give you a nice flush cut on both sides. And flush cutting doesn't usually take the place of there we go. Let's see. Let me see if I can get Julie on here real quick. And flush cutting doesn't usually take the place of
You still have to file it.
of
Yeah.
sanding. Yeah, or filing
Yeah.
or sanding.
But it makes it a lot easier.
Yes, right. So you don't have that peaked point on the ends. And this is really good if you're doing something where you're like clipping a fine wire for things like, maybe filigree or something that you don't need the end necessarily finished on, but you don't want to peak on. These are really nice, and they're good for delicate wire. The and just to give you a standard cutter, these are just a regular, wire cutter, and they'll give you a pinch on both sides. So I'll get like a big pinch
Mm-hmm.
on one side and a smaller pinch on the other. But because of the way that they, kind of come in, you're always going to get, a little bit of a tweak
Yeah.
where it sort of squeeze it together and pulls it apart. So these are pretty good. But when I'm doing multiple lengths, being able to measure it and
Mm-hmm.
be able to cut it successfully and quickly and to the
Yeah.
right length is really important. So if you're doing multiple cuts, there are a number of ways to do it. I've seen so many tricks. One of them that I really like is, taking like stacking washers and using the washers as a measured cut.
Ah, yeah.
And that keeps it all contained inside the washer. And if you're cutting, right on top of the washer, your wires fall in and they just stay right there. And I've seen all kinds of great little devices for things like that where you can set
Mm-hmm.
it on top of something like, a cup and, contain them all, or do it on top of a jar that has a hole in it, where you can stack the washers with a hole underneath it and the wires will drop right
Yeah.
in. So, yeah, exactly. So those things really work well
Any
for
kind of
stuff like
jig that
that.
you can set up. Yeah.
Yes. So one of my favorite jig tools for cutting wire is my scrap bag of tubing, because these are
Yeah.
fantastic. So when you need something like an earring wire length, this can
Mm-hmm.
be great for round and or square, twisted wire, beaded wire, whatever you're doing, because the tubing, you can cut it to exactly the length you want the wire to be. The trick is make sure the tubing is slightly bigger than your wire so the wire doesn't get stuck inside.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. That would be bad.
I learned from experience. But, you've got a great little stopper, just slide it in all the way until it stops and then do your flush cut. And then you've
Then
got,
snip, snip.
yep, and then you've got your wire ready to go. So the tubing works great for that. You can usually get tubing from the hardware store
Yeah.
in the K&S display, and
Yep.
that works really well. There are all kinds of sizes and options for that, but having a little bit of just, brass wire on hand or brass tubing on hand is great for, because you
Mm-hmm.
can again adjust it to any length that you want, right? So yeah. And, if you're using it repeatedly for something like, a particular earring, you slide the wire in, cut them, mark this with whatever design you're using or whatever length it is, so you can use it again. So sometimes I'll take a little piece of tape and write, what length it is on there. Of course, you can always measure it again, but it makes it a little bit easier to do that.
Yeah.
But these guys are the bomb.
That is an awesome tool.
Yeah.
Now, doesn't Julia have a slight similar setup, but it's not connected to one of those tools? Or like she made her own?
Yeah. Yeah, there are all kinds of like overhand solutions as well that are great cutters. But this one is the one that I'm usually using at work every day.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, yesterday I was prepping earring wires for Christmas.
How many of them?
Hundreds of earrings. And yes, hundreds in the
literally hundreds.
Yes. Oh yeah, Julie has the tube cutting jig, and tube cutting jigs are great.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Thank you, Julia. So the tube cutting jig is fantastic for cutting repeated lengths of tubing because you're sawing it, as well as wire. And that can be a great solution for things like patterned wire or square tubing or square wire or tubing in general. Yeah. So if you're doing, and most of them have like a repeated stop on them, so you can easily sort of cut to length because it has an automatic stop that you can adjust where you need it.
Yeah.
The other thing that you can do that with is actually a miter jig. And the miter jigs,
the
miter jigs. And so this is a little bit more of a contraption if you're doing something that really needs to be accurate. But these also come with an automatic stop. So they have what looks like two Allen wrenches in there. Yeah. And one of them's not an Allen wrench. One of them is actually your automatic stop. So what you do, it took me a while to figure this out. I'm like, what's the other one for? Thank you, YouTube. But what happens is with this one, you've got these little holes here on the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's nothing in there for me to tighten. I don't know what's going on. But there's also the Allen wrench little grub screw that's on the end. And what you do is you insert the one that's not an Allen wrench into the end, and that becomes your automatic stop. And then you just tighten it down where you need it. And if you've got sheet or wire that you're trying to cut repeatedly, you can adjust it so it stops the wire from coming through any farther. So that's actually an automatic stop. And this is really great when you're cutting things like rectangle wire on an angle, or because it does the 45 and the 90 degree. So this can be really great if you're doing things like ring bands or rectangle wire, patterned wire, tubing, and some heavier stuff. And you want to saw it and you want something that's a little more accurate. This can be a great solution. And I like the economy jig. I've got mine for about $60 and, not spending a couple $100 on a jig because these can get very expensive. And for me, the economy one works great. I don't need, a couple $100 worth of steel to cut a piece of tubing. I just don't for what I do. So the economy one is fine. And this one is from like Eurotool. And I think it was $60. Yeah. So these are awesome. I love these. And usually you can find most jewelry supply places like Rio and Pepe and Guess Wine will all have a flush cutter like that. But this guy is the one I really want to focus on. So when you get this, it has a couple of parts that are important to know about. The cutter itself is a super flush cutter. So it's flat on both sides. So you don't have any pointed pinching. It kind of crushes it and compresses it off. It's also got these little holes that line up that you can put your wire through and cut through those holes. I don't usually use those because I'm cutting so quickly that trying to get them lined up again is a pain in the butt. So I'm usually using the big old cutters here, and these will cut very heavy stock. because they are,
Yeah.
you know,
Heavy
they're
duty.
bonker heavy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's nice about this is it does have a little bit of a stop or a spring to it, which is nice. It also has a
Mm-hmm.
spring or a stop on the inside, which is really nice.
Nice.
But it's
Yep.
the stop on this that is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. On one side, you've got a connector nut that this standard piece of screwed steel fits right into, right? And
Yep.
you can adjust this little wheel to whatever length you want. And then it's got a couple of nuts that go on the back that keep it from moving while you're working. As I'm cutting,
Yeah.
a lot of times I feel like it's starting to walk. So I like to have it, sort of set so it's not moving on both sides. But the thing that's really awesome about this is at the hardware store, you can get connector nuts like this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it fits right on this particular piece. And what I did was, because I wanted something that was going to allow me to do a little bit closer cut than what I had. And what I did was cut off, if I can back this off far enough, what I did was cut off a little bit of the connector, it's threaded on the inside, and
Yep.
cut it to the length that I needed so I could make the connector nut here shorter.
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
I still have to have enough threads in there to hold this on here, but that way I
Yeah.
can get this even shorter and closer because it's going to
Mm-hmm.
stop, on that mark,
Yep.
So,
Yep.
but using a smaller version of that here,
Mm-hmm.
I can get that shorter space. But I can also, if I'm doing a longer cut, wind this thing all the way out to the end, use this as my connector rather than the short ones. And that just sort of helps,
Mm-hmm.
hold everything together a little more securely when I'm doing a lot of cuts.
Yeah. Gives you a wider range of cuts.
Right. But I seriously, I mean, it's like, feed. If I'm doing, a whole bunch of cuts, with
Yeah.
round or square wire, I just feed it in and just cut. So I can cut, a lot of wires aside from machines that do that job for you. I have found that this
Mm-hmm.
is the fastest way that I can do it by hand and get them consistently measured the same. What I'll do is, where's my ruler? I'll use my steel ruler, boop, and everybody needs a steel ruler, there we go, that they can sort of measure from. And a little steel rule like this has metric on one side and, standard on the other. So I'll just measure my inches from the cutting jaw to the
Mm-hmm.
flat part of the wheel. Or
Yep.
if I'm doing metric, I'll turn it over and measure how many millimeters I need. So that way
Yeah.
I can set it exactly where I need it and tighten it down, lock it in place, and start cutting wires. And I got to tell you, this time of year for production stuff, I'm like, it's like measure,
Cooking.
cut. And when you have to make like 120 cuts
Yeah.
on, for one thing you're doing in
One
production.
style of earring.
Yeah. And I don't have to switch a tool to use round or square. I can continue to use this,
Right.
just remeasure. So this one is well worth its weight in gold. I have just found, for shortening and working more efficiently in the studio, this is great. If I have to measure more than a couple of wires, I will usually break that out, measure it once, and then cut.
Yeah.
What's the old expression? Measure twice and cut once. I'll usually measure twice and then cut 500. So, Chris said from Line Punch Forge says, I love like a wooden block drilled with measured distances, so you can get a pair of flush cutters. Yeah, and using something like plexiglass or Delrin or wood or whatever you've got available to do that works great. One of my favorite, I actually have one that I use for earring wires. That's awesome. So the tubing, like I said earlier, is a great way to measure. So just using the tubing and sliding your wire in and making your cuts. Well, this one was for my 3/8 inch earrings. So I've got a piece of tubing, and I needed a handle. So I drilled a piece of dowel and inserted the tubing in there. That was the 3/8 that I needed. And that way I can just, slide my wire in, boop, and do my cut. And I know that it's going to be consistent, right? So I'm trying to do this for the camera.
What brand is the big cutter?
What brand is it?
Someone was asking if it was a Swanstrom.
This one? I believe it is. Yeah, I believe it's Swanstrom. So yeah, but Rio, and I think this one was in the $70 range. But I got to tell you, man,
it's totally worth it.
It is totally worth it. Yeah, it is a huge time saver. It's just, watching somebody like lay material out and cut it repeatedly. It's just like, oh my God, I can cut. Seriously, I mean, in like if you timed it for a couple of minutes, like a 2-minute, I can cut a couple of hundred, in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So easily with this. Where with measuring, you're like straighten the wire and trying to cut, and then you're straightening the wire and then trying to cut, and then trying to cut.
And you got to mark it.
And oops, that one was too long, and you have to recut it. So this one I just found, and if you're doing individual cuts like that, the chance of you having all your wires just being off a little bit is really high. So having them consistent, you can't do that if you're doing them one at a time. So it just makes it a lot easier to use something that's going to be exact and is flexible, for a variety of things. And that's one of the things that I really insist on when I'm working with tools is like, what else can I use it for? Is it functional and versatile? So if it's functional and versatile, it's going to give me more tool power for the dollar. I'm going to be able to use it in more situations. And so this is worth that investment for me. So if you're doing any sort of production stuff or cutting stuff that you need to get, highly recommend those. Or this style of cutter anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Alton Brown, tool kitchen criteria. It has to have multifunction.
Yeah, it does. It does. And for me, that works great. The fact that I can cut, round, square, and a number of different gauges with it, and I'll use it for beaded wire and twisted wire, like heavy twisted wire for different designs. So it is really good for stuff like that. It has wide range. But so that's my tool for the day. How are you doing, or how are you doing getting things set up in your new studio in London?
Oh my gosh. I was in there for 3 hours today, and
like a wrecking ball.
another delivery or pickup of stuff. Our empty boxes. The moving company is very kind and will come and remove all our empty boxes and papers. And so I was in their studio today, and I was unpacking everything, and I've gotten everything out that needs to come out of a box. And it's quite messy, but I am ready to then start putting things where I want them to go, and I'm so excited.
That is fantastic. I'm so excited that you get to set up your new studio. It's always fun when you're setting up a new space and getting it organized and creating your own environment so that you can be creative is an amazing feeling. That sometimes it takes time to sort of like nest in a little bit, but a couple of tips that I have for people who are setting up their new studios is do a floor plan, of where you're going to put things, and like an elevation of where, like on each wall. So you kind of have on the wall, I'm going to have my bench and I'm going to do this. And so that way, if you need to go to the hardware store and get stuff like pegboard or countertop material, you can do it once instead of 50 times.
Oh, I need that.
Yeah.
Oh, I need
that. Darn, I forgot screws to put up the pegboard, that kind of thing. Yeah. But it saves you some trouble there. And it allows you to, again, make that space, functional and versatile so that you can use it for lots of different situations. And, but, make it comfortable for you. Everybody's like, how should I set up my studio? And I'm like, what are you doing in your studio? Because that's,
Yeah.
what's the intent? What are you going to be using it for? If it's for, 3D printing or enameling or PMC or, construction or soldering or whatever you're doing, it may look very different. And there's no perfect studio, for everyone. It's, there are great studios that are out there, but, making it your own is really important, making sure it's comfortable. And because if you're not comfortable in it, you won't go in and be creative in it. So, yeah.
Nope, sure won't.
Yeah. I'm so excited for you. That's really fun.
I know.
Yay.
Yeah.
So we just added a bunch of new classes to the schedule for Little Metal Foxes.
We haven't actually yet, but it will happen as soon as we hang up. I'm going to start working on the new classes.
Yay!
But we have what's coming down the chute for winter and whatever. Yes, recycling, scraps and alloys. That's coming up. That's actually coming up this weekend.
Saturday. Yeah.
Yep. Saturday. Yep.
So yeah,
and then we have Electro Etching, which is awesome.
With Julia. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we have jewelry sketching with AJ Power. So if you need to, practice, like if you're doing a lot of custom work or you want to do a lot of custom work and be able to communicate with your clients visually, and you need any assistance in developing that skill, that class is the class for you. It's really cool.
Yeah. And not just,
and then
just for jewelers, but for craftspeople, because craftspeople of all kinds, I have found are notorious for being like, oh, I can't draw. It's like, you do the most amazing baskets. You do the most amazing ceramics. You do the most amazing weaving. And it's like, well, I don't draw. And it's like, yeah, but if you can sketch out your idea, it's going to make you better and faster at what you want to do, so yeah.
Yeah. You can really make a plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we also have Studio Sparks have just come up.
Yay.
So Julia does this really great month-long session of daily warm-up ideas, and I did it I did it in August with her when I didn't have any tools or anything ready. All I had was pencil and paper, and it was really helpful just to get your brain kind of working in new creative ways, and it's a really great thing to do. And I know the people who did it last time were really, it really helped them a lot, and it's a really good thing to sign up and get. So do that.
Well, it's really good for it's a good slump buster, and it's good for inspiration, and it's good for self-direction and getting you warmed up in the morning. It's like stretches in the morning if you're before you go for a run or yoga or whatever you're doing. Same sort of thing.
And we have, this is really exciting. Julia's doing a kinetic rivets class. That's really cool. I love her little scissor boxing glove thing. Oh my God, that is so cute. And we have video online, so you can go to the class, look at all the videos that Julia made of the little actions of the pieces and parts.
Yeah, things spin and hinge and all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah.
And then you have your trash to treasure.
Yes.
Sticks and stones.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then what we have coming down in later today, we'll have a new Wax Working for Jewelers series. We'll have Jennifer's Golden Rings Christmas Gold Fill Ring Special.
Yeah, working with Gold Fill. Working with Gold Fill. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then we have more stone setting. We have Bezels Made Perfect. Simple basket wires, or simple wire basket. Sorry, get the wording right. We're going to do a duo flex shaft and the hammer hand tool, lion punch forge, engraving tool class.
Right.
We're doing filigree and flush settings and another rolling mill. The rolling mill is pretty exciting too.
Yeah, and getting back to Julia's Electro Etching class.
That class I cannot say enough.
It is amazing.
Cannot say enough.
And I have some of her samples before me here on my bench somewhere as I tear things apart. But the cool thing about the Electro Etching, I put them all away, I think, after I did the last workshop. But the thing that's really cool about it is you can use them for rolling mill. So you can actually etch brass plates and use your own
Yeah.
textures and designs and everything else in the rolling mill to be able to
Yeah.
texture as a texture plate that you can use repeatedly. So you etch it once
Yes.
and roller mill it. So if you're doing something like silver and you you know, you want to sort of like run that through, it works great. So let's
Yeah.
see, we've got a question. I don't have enough time to get all the equipment from Amazon for that class. Can I still take it? Absolutely, yes.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things that we do is we talk about a lot of the equipment and demonstrate how it's used, and you have access to the video for at least 30 days following the class. So that gives you a chance to sit in, participate, ask all the questions that you want, and then you can go back and follow along with the video, take additional notes, take screenshots, and keep those things that you need.
Yeah, and then email Julia, you know, with
Absolutely.
questions that you may not have
Yeah.
had during the class,
Yeah.
but you need to find something out while you're actually doing
Yeah.
it. You know, so
so a lot of our
yeah.
classes are more they're kind of like lecture and demonstration, and then encourage you to go work on things, and that way we're not like, you know, how's it going in there for 2 hours. But yeah,
But you can also work along. You don't have to do it separately. Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I have a number of people that'll just kind of mute themselves and, you know, go off in their little corner and like listen like I'm a podcast, which is awesome. So they'll go over and like work on stuff while they're listening and watching and asking questions. But it gives you a way that this is an interactive podcast, so you can actually, you know, while you're working, ask the questions if you get into trouble. So, which is really good when you're doing like soldering stuff that you're like, I don't know, or, you know, what torch do I need? What, you know, crucibles work best? Why, you know, different crucibles? I've got this. Will this work? So we'll talk about.
Why is my saw blade breaking constantly?
Yeah. So it's just, you know, what do I do? How does it work? Why?
Yeah.
You know, those kinds of questions are it gives you a chance to get that feedback in the moment rather than saving it up for later and not feeling like you're confident enough to get the work done. So so that's one of the great things I like about our classes. It makes it a little bit different than just watching YouTube or DVDs or, you know, whatever you're buying videos or whatever it is that you're doing. So yeah, absolutely. And even for people that have done it before, there's all kinds of new information that they may not have seen. So, and that's why they are good for all levels of students as well. So we get people,
because you know, someone else may ask a question that you hadn't thought about, and then you learn something new because it's a new way of looking at things.
Yeah, exactly. So it's yeah, absolutely. So if you don't have the stuff, come on, you know, take notes, watch the demonstration, and then when your stuff arrives, hooray! You know, then you've got, you know, something you can work with. So yeah, and you can always watch the video again or ask us questions or whatever you need. So, but yeah, Julia's electro etching class is, you know, if you want to, I've had a lot of people say, can you etch silver? And it's like, why etch silver? You don't want to waste the metal, but you can etch a plate and run it through a rolling mill and do that over and over and over again. So you get that, you know, custom texture that you want. You can use it for, you can use it for, like I did, I used it for solder inlay. When I did that, you can use it for enamels. You can use it as, you know, just a glorious texture on your surface, and adapt it for things like, you know, rings and bands and boxes and lockets and all kinds of things. So yeah, it's a fun class. Enjoy it. So yeah, well, great. We've got, the stone setting series. We've got wax carving coming up, and working with gold fill coming up. And for those of you that are looking for Christmas wish list items, we've also got, the Lion Punch Forge and the rolling mill class. And rolling mills don't have to be expensive. Everybody is so worried about the, you know, the $4,000 Durston rolling mill with a stand and where would they put it, and I don't have room. You don't have to spend that much on a rolling mill. They make a lot less expensive rolling mills that are great for smaller spaces. So yeah. Oh, let's see, question. Where did you get the pliers? The blue repeating cutting pliers, which I love these I got from Rio, and they're about Oh, I think they're in the like $70 range. And I would provide a link, but we're live. So,
Yeah.
Helen, if you could provide a link in the chat, that would be
Oh,
great.
sure. I can go.
But yeah, you can get these from a couple of different vendors, and it's just the thing is just having an automatic stop of some sort, you know. So this one I just love. It cuts all kinds, and they are referred to as a flush cutter with a stop is usually what they're called. So usually you're going to find, because these are like a heavy duty flush cutter, so they're flat on both sides, which is awesome. And this can come off, so if you just need to cut some heavy wire, they're fantastic. But it has a connector nut that you can switch out with any connector nut from the hardware store that fits this particular screw, and screw that right on and adjust your length.
Apparently, my searching is not good on Rio today.
Oh,
Hold on.
there you go. So yeah, so you can adjust
Give
that
me
length.
give me a second.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So this is a fantastic tool, and I like that it sort of, you know, it comes apart so you can store it, you know, kind of flat in a drawer rather than having this, you know, this TV antenna thing sticking up all the time or like poking stuff. It's you getting caught on things. So it's nice that it comes off. And the connector nut, as I was saying before, this nut here comes off, and I can put on a longer or a little bit shorter connector nut. So if I have something that's a shorter wire, it comes with a nut that I actually cut down to make a thinner one. But you still want to be able to have enough screws to connect what you're doing. So
Can't find it.
that's okay. It's on Rio.
I'll if I'll keep looking, and then I'll post it on the
comments in the comments.
Yeah, the comments in the post later.
Yeah. So I can, you know, flip this around and use it either way. But this, if I'm doing longer cut wire, I'll use a longer connecting nut. And I literally just got that from the hardware store that fits on this thread. So, and the cool thing is, if you need a longer screw, or you can actually get threaded rod and make this however long you need it to be. So, yeah. So yeah, we'll post it in the comments after we're off here.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. So yeah, I love mine. So there you go. So cutting repeated lengths. Yeah. So what we did, yeah, this one, the one that came with it, I actually cut down to make it shorter. And but yeah, this is cool. I love this thing. I think they are from Swanstrom is the answer again there on that, I believe. There we go. So yay. There it is. And great for cutting different lengths. There you go. But yeah, square, beaded, twisted, you got it. So, but if you need, you know, additional little nuts, just run to the hardware store. If you need a different size, a length, threaded rod, hardware store. So it's real easy to find that. But the fact that it cuts so heavy, and I can cut the square wire, boink, to any length I want, and it gives me a relatively flat flush end, is really amazing. So yeah, this is 16 gauge.
Really cool.
Yeah, this is 16 gauge square wire, and the end cut on that is nice and flat. So I will sand it down to make my, you know, the ends a little flatter, but you know, that's all I do with that. So anyway, there you go, everybody.
Yay!
And yeah, we'll post the link to that in comments. So there you go. So yeah, take a look. We're adding a whole bunch of new.
Someone found it. They are made by Swanstrom Flush Cutter.
111.
Yeah.
111-789. Thank you, Webster, or WB Sylvester. WB Sylvester. There you are. Thank you. Yay. All right. So yeah. And oh, you love yours? And didn't know you could get an extra connector knot. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Take the threaded rod. I know you don't have to take the whole thing. You could take the whole thing if you want to impress the guys at the hardware store. But all you need to take is like the threaded rod, and you can get connector nuts like that. They're just longer nuts that you can buy. And then saw them down to the length that you need if you need a shorter cut than the one it comes with, because that just comes right off. So if you're like, I can't get it short enough, cut it down. I sanded mine a little bit and made it a little smoother, but that way I can get it a little bit tighter than what the one that came with it was letting me do. So anyway, yes, do that. Oh, hello there. How are you?
Mr. Darcy woke up. He's saying
Mr.
hello.
Darcy woke up. Simon is snoozing. He's doing much better after his procedure.
Aww.
But he was so brave. He had a little thing on his side that had to come off, and but he was so brave and so good they didn't have to knock him out.
I know.
So they just gave him a little. They were like pet on him and like shaved a little spot on his side and gave him a local anesthetic, and were able to do a clip and 3 stitches, and he sat there just as like just as brave as could be, and was happy to go home when he was done.
He's so good.
Yeah, he was a good boy. So yay for studio friends. And yeah. All right, everybody. Again, have a great week. We'll be back next week with more tool tips. And just for those of you that are watching this on YouTube later, because all the tool tips are on our YouTube channel, so check it out there. Today is October the 5th, Tuesday, October 5th, 2021, because I'm sure we'll have more of these. But I think we've got almost 30 of our tool tips posted, so you can sort of speed through the stuff that you don't need and take pictures and screenshots or whatever you need. But yeah, go to the YouTube channel and check out our tool tips there, and follow, like, ring that bell. We've turned into those people, right. So yay. All right, and and we're gonna keep on doing these. We've been getting great feedback, and we have done a couple of tips that people have requested that they want to see. So if you have a request, message us and let us know if you have a question or a tool tip that you'd like to see us do. So, all right.
Happy to do it.
All right. Helen, you have a great evening in London.
Thank you.
And
you have a good day in Seattle.
I will. And lots of love to you. And thanks, everybody. We will see you guys next time. Mwah!
Next time.
Bye.